President Trump's voter fraud panel is stymied by a growing list of states who are refusing to supply voter information in part or altogether. Joining us now to discuss this is Ken Blackwell. He's a member of the Presidential Commission on Election Integrity and former Republican Secretary of State of Ohio. It's good to have you, sir.
Good morning, Chris.
What do you make of these concerns of various secretaries of state about the information that was being requested?
Well, many secretaries of state are, just as I am, instinctively a federalist. They protect their turf, and they are very, very resistant to federal government control of a process that has found its genius in the fact that we have 50 states that control the elections in their and the election information in their. What I find interesting is that, only 14 states and the District of Columbia have refused to give any of the information to the commission, even that information that has to be made available publicly. You have others who are resistant to give information that they think goes against the laws and rules and regulations of their states. This is a process where we have to keep our eyes focused on what the objective is. The objective is to protect the oldest democracy in human history, and that is the United States of America's election system. It is not a perfect system. It is a system in constant need of review, in constant need of observing and identifying threats to the integrity of the system, and taking corrective action.
Right.
And I think that's the overall general mission of the commission.
Well, that seems to be the suspicion goes down to what the inception and conception of this commission is really all about. I mean, there are critics who have said that this is basically the president squandering resources, putting personal data at risk to rationalize a statement that everyone knows is false, which is that there were 3 million illegal votes, that's what started this for President Trump, and now it is a commission in search of a problem.
No, it's not. I think the commission has a very clear understanding, and Vice President Pence articulated it well. Our system is based on a concept of one person, one vote. We must make sure that the ballot box is accessible with not any undue restrictions to access by each and every voter. But at the same time, and that we've concentrated on this in the last 15 years, we must make sure that not one legitimate vote is negated by an illegitimate vote. And I think understanding those twin objectives is very important to understanding the mission of the system. I just heard you with your previous guest talk about a threat of manipulation of election systems at the state level by the Russians. I am sure the Chinese, the Iranians, and others with technological capability will try to manipulate our system. I think that there are folks who have untoward objectives in the United States that will in fact try to mess with the system. We have to make sure that we are out in front of those attempts to manipulate and corrupt the system. Cheers. This
But
is
you're
what
not
I tell
doing
people.
that with this commission, though, Ken. That's not what you're doing with this commission. You're not looking at Russian hacking at all. You're trying to get people's personal information.
Come on, Chris.
Well, man, that's what you're requesting.
I've been in this.
That's what you're requesting is people's social security numbers and their party affiliation.
There are states that will not release that, and that is understandable. The question that is before us is, how do you protect the vote? Let me just give you an example. In 1976, Jimmy Carter won Ohio by a little under 12,000 votes. That was less than 1 vote per precinct in Ohio. If you had just flipped 6,000 votes, Ford would have remained president and Carter would have gone back to Georgia. That's how important 1 vote in 1 precinct is. And therefore, this commission is looking at how do we protect the people's right to have their vote counted when it is legitimately legally cast, and how do we in fact make sure that there are protections against outside threats and manipulation.
Yeah, the criticism is
Chris,
that it doesn't seem to be conceived in a way to succeed in that objective, because you're asking for information arguably you'd never want public, right? You'd really never want, you said in the letter that this may become public, and then you're asking for Social Security numbers. And it doesn't seem that the commission is set up to cure a problem that people have looked at and found doesn't really exist.
Chris.
Yes,
Chris. Well, there are those who would want to kill the commission in the crib. That's pure nonsense. There are organizations that understand that our voter rolls across the country are corrupt. And that corruption is a vulnerability and an opening to folks who might want to change the result of an election. What we have to work on is an articulation between the 50 states and the District of Columbia in counting ballots. Who can be against that? That is what this commission is in place to deal with.
But how would the commission do it?
Those who would want to give
the information that you're going to get from these states is largely public information that's not, according to forensic experts who do this, they're saying the information you'll get from the states won't help you in any real way to analyze what role is legit and what isn't. And the information that you're asking that may become public would be dangerous and expose people to identity theft.
Chris,
yes, sir.
One, that information won't be made available. I think what's important to understand is that what we need to do is to make sure that we are advancing best practices and enhancing the articulation between the systems. In terms of voter registration, there is technology. Question is there a will to make sure that we clean up our voter rolls, to take away the opportunity for illegitimate votes to be cast, negating legitimate votes. And I just gave you an example of how one vote per precinct is important. So we don't have to chase 5 million, alleged corrupt voters. We, in fact, have to be concerned about one vote per precinct, because that can change the course of history and the well-being of the United States of America. This is a commission with a legitimate objective and mission, and we're going to get it done, and we're going to get it done working in a bipartisan fashion. Secretary Gardner and I had the pleasure of working on a bipartisan effort when we were treasurers, when we were secretaries of state, and now as commissioners on the Election Integrity Commission. That's going to get done. We have a history. Ohio, our elections are managed by bipartisan systems, 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans in all 88 counties. We have a history of working in a bipartisan fashion, and we're going to get it done.
Well, look, I respect the optimism. Everybody wants more accuracy in our elections. We'll have to hold out hope that with the reluctance of these secretaries of state and the kind of information you're going to get, that you can make this kind of progress that you want. But I appreciate you making the case on New Day.
Thank you, sir. We don't want naysayers. We want folks who are optimistic and who say, let's get this done, because the quality and the integrity of our democracy turns on us getting it done.
Absolutely. But you got to have the right information. It's got to be done the right way. Sir. Be well. Poppy.
Absolutely. And we got to look at all threats, including Russia, China, and what have you, when it comes to the vulnerability of our state systems and the inarticulation between state systems. We can make a real contribution, and it falls within the mission statement of this commission